Oh, come on.
The coffee maker was gurgling like a dying animal when I realized my wife was planning to destroy me. Not the dramatic soap opera kind of destruction. That would have been too honest for Amelia. No, this was the slow, methodical dismantling of a man's life, one carefully placed lie at a time. I'm Vince Palmer, 39 years old, co-owner and chief technology officer of Palmer Electric, and apparently the biggest fool in suburban Michigan. The irony wasn't lost on me that a guy who spent his days untangling electrical problems couldn't see the short circuit happening in his own home. "You're up early," Amelia said, gliding into the kitchen like she owned it, which, technically, she did. Half of it, anyway. Her blonde hair was perfect despite the early hour, makeup flawless, wearing that cream-colored blouse that cost more than most people's car payments. "Board meeting with the Riverside Project," I replied, not looking up from my phone. "Greg's been dodging my calls about the budget overruns." She made a non-committal sound, already scrolling through her own device. My brother Greg handled residential contracts while I managed the commercial side. Lately, he'd been about as communicative as a dead battery. "Don't wait up tonight," Amelia said casually. "Dinner meeting with the Morrison account. Might run late." Third dinner meeting this week. Either Morrison Industries had the most complex electrical needs in the state, or my wife was feeding me a line of bullcrap thick enough to power the entire grid. "Which restaurant?" I asked. She paused for just a fraction of a second. "That new place downtown. Vertigo." Vertigo. The kind of establishment where appetizers cost $50 and the lighting was dim enough to hide wedding rings. I'd driven past it last Tuesday around 9 p.m. Amelia's BMW wasn't in the lot, but there was a familiar black Audi parked right up front. Owen Cross's Audi. Owen, the city inspector who'd been Amelia's old friend since college. Owen, who somehow always found time to stop by our office when I wasn't around. Owen, who drove a car that cost more than most people's annual salary on a civil servant's paycheck. "Have fun," I said, forcing a smile. "Don't let Morrison talk your ear off about voltage regulations." She laughed, but it sounded hollow. "You know how these corporate types can be." Oh, I knew exactly how they could be. After she left, I sat in the kitchen listening to the house settle around me. Lucy and Mia were still asleep, 15 and 13 respectively, and both inherited their mother's ability to sleep through anything short of an earthquake. They also inherited her looks, which meant I'd be dealing with teenage boys soon enough. Just another problem on my growing list. My phone buzzed. A text from Nate, my only real friend and Palmer Electric's lead foreman. "Coffee? Got some gossip that'll curl your wire nuts." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Nate at Murphy's Diner, watching him demolish a stack of pancakes that could have fed a small village. "So," he said between bites, "you know how the guys talk, right?" "Unfortunately." "Word around the shop is that your missus has been making some interesting friends at City Hall." I kept my expression neutral. Define interesting. "The kind that drive German cars and wear suits that cost more than my mortgage payment." Nate leaned forward. "Look, Vince, I don't like spreading rumors, but Tommy saw her and that inspector guy at the Marriott bar last Thursday. Real cozy-like." Tommy was our youngest electrician, barely old enough to drink legally, but he had eyes like a hawk and a memory like a steel trap. "What time was this?" "Around 11. She told you she was at her book club, right?" Actually, she'd said she was visiting her sister in Ann Arbor. The lies were multiplying faster than I could track them. "Thanks for the heads up," I said. "You want me to keep an ear out?" "Just be aware. Things might get complicated around the office." Nate nodded grimly. He'd been with Palmer Electric since the beginning, back when it was just me and Greg working out of our dad's garage. He understood loyalty, which was more than I could say for some members of my family. The office was buzzing when I arrived. Literally buzzing. We had a short somewhere in the main panel that I'd been meaning to fix for weeks. Sometimes the most obvious problems are the easiest to ignore. "Morning, Mr. Palmer," called Janet, our office manager. She was 60-something, had worked for electrical contractors her entire career, and could spot trouble from 3 counties away. "Your brother's looking for you," seemed agitated. Greg was in his office, hunched over spreadsheets like a man trying to solve world hunger through mathematics. He looked up when I knocked, and I noticed the dark circles under his eyes. "We need to talk," he said. "About the Riverside overruns?" "About the business, about changes." I settled into the chair across from his desk. What kind of changes? The kind where maybe it's time to restructure, bring in some new partners, fresh perspective. Fresh perspective on what? We're booked solid through next spring. Greg shifted uncomfortably. It's not about the work, Vince. It's about efficiency. Modern management techniques. Modern management techniques. That was corporate speak for, we're about to screw you over. Who's been filling your head with this garbage? It's not garbage. Amelia's been doing some research, talking to consultants. Amelia. The pieces were starting to form a picture I didn't like. Since when does Amelia consult on business operations? She's got a business degree, Vince. She understands these things. She understands marketing and client relations. She doesn't know the first thing about running an electrical contracting firm. Greg's jaw tightened. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've been too focused on the technical side and not enough on the business side. I stared at my brother, really looked at him for the first time in months. The expensive haircut, the new suit, the watch that definitely wasn't in our company catalog. Someone had been investing in Greg's appearance, and it wasn't coming out of his salary. Who's paying for the makeover, Greg? What? The clothes, the watch, the sudden interest in corporate restructuring. Who's behind it? He stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this paranoid bullcrap. Paranoid? I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. My wife's having dinner meetings 4 nights a week with a city inspector who drives a car worth more than his annual salary. My brother suddenly wants to restructure a profitable business, and I'm paranoid? Greg's face went pale. Vince, save it. I headed for the door. But, Greg, if you're planning something, you better make sure your math is right. Because I didn't build this company to watch it get carved up by amateurs. I spent the rest of the day in the field, checking job sites and trying to clear my head. Physical work had always been my therapy. There was something satisfying about solving problems with your hands, about making connections that actually worked. Around 5 p.m., I was finishing up at a warehouse installation when my phone rang. Amelia. Hey, honey, she said, her voice syrupy sweet. Just wanted to let you know I'll be even later tonight. Morrison wants to discuss the expansion project over drinks. At Vertigo? Another pause. Actually, we're meeting at his office, more private for sensitive negotiations. Morrison Industries was a family-owned manufacturing company. They didn't have late-night office meetings. They barely had daytime office meetings. Sounds important, I said. It could be huge for us, Vince. Really huge. Us. As if we were still a team. After hanging up, I sat in my truck for a long time, watching the sun set over the industrial district. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the hum of high-voltage lines carrying power across the city. All those connections, all that energy flowing where it was supposed to go. Unlike my marriage. I drove home to an empty house. The girls were at sleepovers. Amelia was off doing whatever she was really doing, and I was alone with my thoughts and a growing certainty that my life was about to change dramatically. That's when I found the tablet. Amelia had left her iPad on the kitchen counter, probably in her rush to get ready for her meeting. It was still logged into her messaging apps, and I'm not proud of what I did next. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and I was feeling pretty desperate. The group chat was labeled Project Blue Wire. Blue wire. In electrical work, that's typically the neutral wire, the one that completes the circuit and carries current back to the source. But Palmer Electric had always used it as slang for a hot job, a project that could make or break you. The messages made my blood run cold. Amelia. Owen's place, Sat night. Can't wait for the blue wire. Owen. Everything's in place. Greg's handling the paperwork. Greg. V still doesn't suspect anything. This is going to be easier than we thought. Amelia. Just remember, he has to look unstable, erratic. The custody hearing won't go our way otherwise. Owen. My contact at the court owes me a favor. As long as we have documentation of his episodes, we're golden. Greg. What about the business assets? Amelia. Once I have custody and he's out of the picture, we can restructure however we want. Palmer Electric becomes Cross Palmer Consulting. Owen. I like the sound of that. I read the entire conversation 3 times, my hands shaking with rage. They weren't just planning to destroy my marriage. They were planning to take my daughters, my business, and my reputation. They were planning to erase me completely. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd underestimated the man who'd built Palmer Electric from nothing, who'd spent 20 years learning how to solve problems that seemed impossible, who'd never backed down from a challenge in his life. They wanted to play with electricity? Fine. But they were about to learn that when you don't respect the current, you get burned. Saturday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made me optimistic about life. Today, it just felt like nature mocking me. I'd spent the night reading and rereading those messages, planning my next move with the methodical precision I usually reserve for complex electrical systems. The wedding was supposed to be next weekend. Amelia's cousin Sarah was marrying some trust fund kid from Grosse Pointe, and we'd been planning to attend for months. More importantly, Amelia had scheduled her bachelorette party for tonight, a last hurrah with the girls before settling into married life. Except the messages made it clear that tonight's party was just cover for another rendezvous with Owen. I was in my home office, ostensibly reviewing blueprints for the Riverside project, when Amelia appeared in the doorway. She was wearing a black cocktail dress that probably cost more than most people's rent, and her smile had that predatory quality I'd somehow missed for months. "How do I look?" she asked, doing a little spin. "Like $1,000,000, I said honestly. "Sarah's going to love the dress." "Actually, there's been a change of plans." She perched on the edge of my desk, her perfume filling the air between us. "Sarah wants to keep things low-key tonight, just dinner and drinks at that new place downtown." "Vertigo?" Her eyes flickered. "How did you know?" "Lucky guess. You've been talking about wanting to try it." "Right." She relaxed slightly. "Anyway, we might make it a late night. You know how these things go." "Sure do." I leaned back in my chair. "Hey, speaking of changes, I've been thinking about the business." "Oh?" "Greg mentioned something about restructuring, bringing in new partners." Amelia's expression didn't change, but I caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "He's just trying to modernize things, Vince. You can be a little set in your ways." "Set in my ways?" "Traditional, conservative. Sometimes you have to take risks to grow." "And what kind of risks are we talking about?" She slid off the desk, suddenly eager to leave. "Nothing you need to worry about tonight. Just focus on relaxing, maybe watch a game or something." After she left, I sat in the quiet house for exactly 10 minutes. Then I picked up my phone and called the wedding venue. "Riverside Country Club. This is Jennifer speaking." "Hi, Jennifer. This is Vince Palmer. I need to cancel our reservation for next Saturday." "Oh no. Is everything all right, Mr. Palmer?" "Just a change of plans. Can you cancel the entire Palmer party reservation?" "Of course, but I should mention that cancellation fees, whatever the fees are, that's fine. Just make sure everything's canceled. The dinner, the flowers, the band, all of it." "I'll take care of it right away, Mr. Palmer. I'm so sorry things didn't work out." "Don't be. Sometimes canceling is the best decision you can make." Next, I called our bank. Amelia and I had joint accounts, but I'd been the one to set them up. I knew exactly which cards she carried and which accounts she accessed regularly. First National, this is David. "Hi, David, this is Vince Palmer. I need to put a temporary hold on some of our joint accounts." "Is there a problem with fraudulent activity?" "Let's call it a precautionary measure. I'll be in Monday to sort out the details." By the time I finished with the bank, Amelia's credit cards were frozen, her access to our business accounts was suspended, and her automatic payments for everything from her gym membership to her car payment were about to bounce. Then I settled in to wait. The call came at 9:47 p.m., just as I was finishing a beer and watching college football. "Mr. Palmer?" The voice was young, nervous. "This is Jennifer from Riverside Country Club." "Hi, Jennifer. I'm sorry to bother you so late, but we just had a very angry woman here demanding to know why her wedding reception was canceled. She said she was part of the Palmer party." "That would be my wife. What did you tell her?" "That you called this morning and canceled everything. She's pretty upset. She's asking for your phone number." "Don't give it to her. In fact, if she comes back, call security." "Mr. Palmer, I have to ask, is everything okay?" "Everything's perfect, Jennifer. Thanks for calling." I turned off my phone and poured another beer. The real show was just getting started. According to the group chat I'd been monitoring all day, the bachelorette party was supposed to end around 11, with Amelia meeting Owen at his condo afterward. Instead, she'd just had her cover story blown up in front of her friends, her cousin, and probably half of suburban Detroit's social elite. My phone started buzzing with texts around 10:15. I turned it back on just to enjoy the show. Amelia. "What the hell did you do?" Amelia. "Call me right now." Amelia. "Vince, I swear to God." Amelia. "My card isn't working. Fix this now." I typed back. "Having technical difficulties? Maybe Owen can help. He seems good with your wiring." The response was immediate. "We need to talk." "Absolutely. I'll be here all night. Bring Owen if you want." I've got some things to discuss with both of you." She didn't respond to that. Around 11:30, I heard car doors slamming in the driveway. Multiple cars. This was going to be interesting. The front door burst open without a knock. Amelia stormed in, still wearing her cocktail dress but looking significantly less polished. Behind her came Owen Cross, looking like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. And bringing up the rear was an older man I recognized as Amelia's father, Richard Garrow. "You son of a bitch," Amelia snarled. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Saved myself about $30,000 in wedding expenses," I suggested. "Plus the cost of a divorce lawyer since you were obviously planning to leave anyway." Owen stepped forward, trying to look intimidating in his expensive suit. "Vince, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "The only misunderstanding," I interrupted, "is you thinking I'm stupid enough not to notice when my wife's screwing the city inspector." Richard Garrow's face turned purple. "How dare you speak about my daughter that way? Your daughter's been planning to destroy my life, take my kids, and steal my business. I'd say that earns her some honest feedback." Amelia's eyes were wild. "You're delusional. You've lost your mind." "Have I?" I pulled out her tablet, which I'd thoughtfully brought downstairs. "Project Blue Wire. Interesting name for a conspiracy." The color drained from Owen's face. Amelia looked like she might throw up. "That's private property," Owen said weakly. "It was sitting on my kitchen counter. In my house, that I pay for." I scrolled through the messages. Let's see. V still doesn't suspect anything. That's me, right? V for Vince? "You're taking those messages out of context," Amelia said, but her voice had lost its edge. "Am I? What's the context for he has to look unstable and the custody hearing won't go our way otherwise?" Richard Garrow snatched the tablet from my hands. "This doesn't prove anything." "It proves enough." I looked at Owen. "Tell me, how does a city inspector afford a $60,000 car? Because I'm pretty sure the taxpayers would be interested in that math." Owen's jaw tightened. "My finances are none of your business. They are when you're planning to steal half of mine." That's when things got physical. Owen lunged at me, probably thinking he could intimidate me into backing down. What he didn't know was that I'd spent the last 15 years doing physical labor and the last 5 years hitting the gym religiously. He was soft, corporate soft, and I was not. I sidestepped his clumsy charge and grabbed the nearest weapon, a surge protector from the entertainment center. The irony was perfect. "You want to get wired up, Owen?" I swung the surge protector like a club, catching him across the shoulder. "Let me help you with that." He stumbled backward, more surprised than hurt. "You're crazy! Crazy like a fox!" I advanced on him, surge protector raised. "Stay away from my wife, stay away from my business, and stay the hell away from my family." "Vince!" Amelia grabbed my arm. "Stop it!" I shook her off. "You don't get to tell me to stop anything. You lost that right when you decided to destroy my life." Richard Garrow was on his phone, probably calling the police. Let him. I had documentation of their conspiracy, and Owen had thrown the first punch. "Get out of my house," I said quietly. "All of you. Get out now and don't come back." "This isn't over," Owen snarled, nursing his shoulder. "You're right, it's not." I smiled, and it wasn't a nice smile. "It's just getting started." After they left, I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room thinking. The first phase was complete. I disrupted their timeline and forced them into the open. But they'd regroup quickly, and they'd come back with lawyers and court orders and all the weapons that money and connections could buy. That was fine. I'd been preparing for this fight longer than they knew. I went back to my office and opened my laptop. Time to do some real research on Mr. Owen Cross, city inspector and would-be homewrecker. Because if there's one thing you learn in the electrical business, it's that every system has a weak point. You just have to know where to look. Sunday morning brought a hangover I hadn't earned, and a clarity I definitely had. The house felt different now, not like a home, but like a crime scene where the crime hadn't been committed yet. I made coffee and started making lists, the way I always did when facing a complex problem. List 1, what they had on me. Honestly, not much. I paid my taxes, didn't cheat on my wife, and ran a legitimate business. Their plan to make me look unstable would require manufacturing evidence. List 2, what I had on them. The group chat was a good start, but I needed more. Financial records, phone logs, anything that would prove the scope of their conspiracy. List 3, what I needed to protect. My daughters, first and foremost. My business, second. My reputation, a distant third. I could rebuild that if necessary. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when Lucy wandered downstairs, still in her pajamas and looking confused. Dad? Why is Mom stuffing garbage bags on the porch? I'd forgotten about that part. After the confrontation, I'd spent a couple hours packing Amelia's belongings. Not out of spite, well, not entirely out of spite, but because I knew she'd be back with a locksmith and possibly a sheriff's deputy. Your mother and I are having some problems, kiddo. Lucy was 15, old enough to understand that problems was adult code for your world is about to change dramatically. She sat down across from me, her expression serious. Is it because of that guy with the fancy car? Smart kid. Too smart for her own good sometimes. You know about Owen? I'm not blind, Dad. He's been coming around the office a lot, and Mom gets all weird and giggly when he's here. She paused. Plus, Mia saw them kissing in his car last week. Mia saw what? She was walking home from Emma's house and saw Mom and that guy making out in the parking lot behind Starbucks. She didn't want to tell you because she thought you'd get mad at her. I closed my eyes and counted to 10. My 13-year-old daughter had been carrying that burden for a week, protecting me from the truth I'd already figured out. Where's your sister now? Still asleep. Dad, are you and Mom getting divorced? The question hung in the air like smoke. I could lie, try to protect her from the ugliness that was coming. But Lucy deserved better than that. Probably, yeah. She nodded like she'd expected that answer. Good. Good? She's been mean to you for months. Like, really mean. And she's always on her phone, and she never asks about school or friends or anything. Lucy shrugged. Honestly, I was wondering why you put up with it. Kids see everything. Remember that if you ever think you're hiding your problems from them. What about Mia? She'll be okay. She's tougher than she looks. Lucy reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We'll all be okay, Dad. I hoped she was right. Around noon, Nate called. You busy? I've got some information you might find interesting. We met at Murphy's Diner again. Nate looked like he'd been up all night, which probably meant he'd been doing exactly what I'd asked him not to do, digging into things that weren't his business. So, he said, sliding into the booth across from me. Remember how you said things might get complicated? Yeah. Well, they just did. He pulled out a manila folder. I've got a buddy who works for the city, maintenance department. He's been hearing rumors about certain inspectors taking payments to expedite permits. What kind of payments? The kind that buy German cars and downtown condos? Nate opened the folder. Owen Cross has approved 17 major electrical permits in the last 6 months. Guess how many of those jobs went to Palmer Electric? None of them. Bingo! They all went to Cross Construction Services. I stared at the paperwork. Cross Construction Services. Even the name was a slap in the face. There's more, Nate continued. Cross Construction is owned by a shell company, which is owned by another shell company, which is owned by... He paused dramatically. Richard Garrow, Amelia's father. The pieces were falling into place like dominoes. So, Owen's been steering city contracts to his girlfriend's father's company, while simultaneously blocking permits for Palmer Electric. We've had 3 major jobs delayed in the last 2 months because of regulatory issues. I thought about the Riverside project, the budget overruns, Greg's mysterious absences. How long has this been going on? Best guess, about a year, maybe longer. A year. They'd been planning this for a year, systematically undermining my business while I worried about voltage drops and load calculations. There's something else, Nate said quietly. Your brother's been meeting with Owen and Garrow, weekly meetings usually at that fancy steakhouse downtown. Greg's in on it, up to his eyeballs. And Vince? He's been asking questions about your mental state, telling people you've been stressed, erratic, maybe drinking too much. The setup was more elaborate than I'd realized. They weren't just planning to steal my business. They were planning to destroy my credibility so thoroughly that no one would believe my side of the story. What do you want to do? Nate asked. I want to fight back, but I need more ammunition first. What kind of ammunition? I thought about Owen's expensive lifestyle, Greg's sudden interest in corporate restructuring, and Amelia's increasingly elaborate lies. The kind that proves they're all criminals. Monday morning, I called in sick to work and drove downtown to visit my father. We hadn't spoken in months. Dad and I had a complicated relationship that mostly involved avoiding each other, but he had resources I needed. Frank Palmer was 73 years old, a retired Detroit police detective, and the most suspicious man I'd ever met. He lived in a small apartment near the river, surrounded by police scanners, old case files, and a lifetime's worth of cynicism. Well, look what the cat dragged in, he said when he opened the door. Let me guess. You need something. Nice to see you too, Dad. His apartment smelled like coffee and old cigarettes. The walls were covered with commendations, crime scene photos, and newspaper clippings from cases he'd worked. Frank Palmer had spent 40 years putting bad guys in prison, and retirement hadn't dulled his instincts. "So, what's the problem?" he asked, settling into his recliner. "Wife trouble?" "How'd you know?" "You've got that look. Same look your mother had right before she divorced me." He chuckled. "What'd you do wrong?" "Nothing. That's the problem." I told him everything. The affair, the conspiracy, the business sabotage, all of it. Dad listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "You've got a real problem," he said when I finished. "These people aren't amateurs. Can you help?" "Depends. How dirty are you willing to get?" I thought about Lucy and Mia, about the business I'd built from nothing, about 20 years of marriage that had apparently been a lie. As dirty as necessary. Dad smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. "That's my boy." He spent the next hour making phone calls to people with names like Bulldog and the Ferret. By the time he finished, I had appointments with a private investigator, a forensic accountant, and a divorce lawyer who specialized in high-conflict cases. "One more thing," Dad said as I was leaving. "You're going to need to document everything from now on. Every conversation, every threat, every attempt at contact. These people are going to try to provoke you into doing something stupid. What if they succeed? Then you'll lose everything, and they'll win." He gripped my shoulder. "Don't let them win, son." I drove home feeling like I had a plan for the first time in days. The plan was simple: gather evidence, build a case, and destroy them before they could destroy me. What I didn't expect was to find Owen Cross sitting in my driveway when I got home. He was leaning against his black Audi, looking like he owned the place. When he saw me pull up, he straightened and walked over to my truck. "We need to talk," he said. "No, we don't." "This thing with Amelia, it's not what you think." I laughed. "It's exactly what I think. You're screwing my wife and trying to steal my business." "The business thing is separate. That's just smart investing." "Smart investing?" I got out of my truck, suddenly furious. "You've been blocking my permits and steering contracts to your shell companies. That's not investing, that's fraud." Owen's expression hardened. "You can't prove any of that." "Want to bet?" We stood there facing each other in my driveway, two men who'd reached the point where words weren't going to solve anything. Owen was bigger than me, but he had that soft look of someone who'd never been in a real fight. "Here's what's going to happen," he said quietly. "You're going to sign over your share of Palmer Electric to Greg. You're going to agree to joint custody of the girls, and you're going to keep your mouth shut about things that aren't your business. And if I don't, then things get unpleasant. For you, for your daughters, for your business. We have resources, Vince. Connections. We can make your life very difficult." That's when I realized they'd already decided I was a threat that needed to be eliminated. The nice approach was over. From now on, it was war. "Get off my property," I said quietly. "Think about what I said." "I am thinking about it. I'm thinking about how much I'm going to enjoy watching you explain your lifestyle to a federal judge." Owen's face went pale. "You don't know what you're messing with. Neither do you." After he left, I sat in my truck for a long time, thinking about what Dad had said. They were going to try to provoke me into doing something stupid. Well, they'd succeeded. But maybe stupid was exactly what the situation called for. Tuesday morning, I walked into Palmer Electric like nothing had changed. Janet looked up from her desk with the expression of someone who'd been fielding uncomfortable phone calls. "Morning, Mr. Palmer. Your brother wants to see you." "I bet he does." Greg was waiting in his office with a man I didn't recognize. Expensive suit, briefcase, the unmistakable look of a lawyer who charged by the minute. "Vince, this is Robert Chen, our corporate attorney." I shook Chen's hand, noting the firm grip and calculating eyes. Didn't know we needed corporate representation. "Given recent events," Chen said smoothly, "Greg thought it would be wise to clarify certain business arrangements." "What kind of arrangements?" Greg cleared his throat. "The partnership agreement we signed 15 years ago. It has some ambiguous language regarding dissolution and asset distribution." I sat down, suddenly very interested. "Ambiguous how?" Chen opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document. "The current agreement states that in the event of a partner's incapacity, mental or physical, the remaining partner assumes full control of business operations." Define incapacity. The language is deliberately broad. Substance abuse, erratic behavior, actions detrimental to the company's reputation. I looked at Greg, who couldn't meet my eyes. You're trying to have me declared incompetent. We're trying to protect the business, Greg said. Your behavior lately has been concerning... My behavior? Chen consulted his notes. Canceling client events without authorization, making threats against city officials, displaying signs of paranoia and aggression. They'd been busy. In less than 3 days, they'd built a narrative that painted me as an unstable business partner who needed to be removed for everyone's good. Who's been feeding you this information? I asked. Multiple sources, Chen replied. Employees, clients, family members. Family members like my wife, who's been screwing a city inspector? Chen's expression didn't change. Personal marital issues aside, the business needs stability. You're right, it does. I stood up. Which is why I'm calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Full partnership review, complete financial audit, the works. Greg's face went white. Vince, that's not necessary. It's absolutely necessary. If you want to question my competency, let's do it properly, with lawyers, accountants, and full disclosure of all business relationships. I walked out before they could respond, leaving them to contemplate what a full audit might reveal about their creative bookkeeping. My next stop was the private investigator Dad had recommended. Maria Santos worked out of a small office above a bail bondsman, which should have been my first clue about her client base. So, she said, reviewing the notes I'd given her, your wife's cheating, your brother's stealing, and the city inspector's running a kickback scheme. Just another Tuesday in Detroit. Can you prove it? Honey, I can prove anything if you give me enough time and money. Question is, what do you want to do with the proof? I want to destroy them, Maria smiled. Now you're talking my language. She explained her approach. Financial surveillance, photographic evidence, digital forensics. Within a week, she'd have enough documentation to bury all 3 of them. One thing, she said as I was leaving, these people are going to fight back, hard. You sure you're ready for that? I'm sure. Good, because it's about to get ugly. She was right. By Wednesday morning, the ugliness had reached epic proportions. I arrived at the office to find 2 police officers waiting in the parking lot. Behind them, Owen Cross stood next to his Audi, looking smug. Vincent Palmer? The older officer asked. That's me. We need to ask you some questions about an incident yesterday evening. What kind of incident? Owen stepped forward. Someone vandalized my car, slashed the tires, scratched the paint, left some very unpleasant messages. I looked at the Audi. Someone had indeed done a number on it. All 4 tires flat, long scratches along both sides, and what appeared to be dog feces smeared on the windshield. That's unfortunate, I said. But I don't see what it has to do with me. Mr. Cross says you threatened him on Monday, the younger officer said. Made some statements about making his life difficult. I told him to stay away from my family. That's not a threat. That's a reasonable request. Owen pulled out his phone. I recorded our conversation. You clearly threatened to... I clearly told you to get off my property. I looked at the officers. Am I under arrest? Not at this time, the older officer said. But we'd appreciate if you stayed available for questions. I'll be right here, working at the business I built. After they left, I called Maria Santos. Someone vandalized Owen's car last night, I told her. Wasn't me, she said immediately. I don't do property damage. I didn't ask if it was you. I'm just saying someone beat us to it. Interesting. You got any ideas who might have done it? I thought about Nate, about Tommy and the other guys who'd worked for Palmer Electric for years, men who didn't appreciate seeing their boss get screwed over. No idea, I said. But whoever it was, they've got good taste in targets. The board meeting that afternoon was a masterpiece of corporate theater. Greg and Chen had prepared a presentation about my declining mental state and the need for immediate intervention. They had statements from employees, documentation of my erratic behavior, and a proposed restructuring plan that would leave me with a minority stake in my own company. What they didn't have was an answer for the financial irregularities Maria Santos had uncovered in just 2 days of investigation. Interesting expenses here, I said, reviewing the documents she'd provided. $17,000 in consulting fees paid to Cross Construction Services. What exactly were they consulting about? Greg shifted uncomfortably. Regulatory compliance issues. Regulatory compliance that required weekly dinners at Morton's Steakhouse? Chen leaned forward. Mr. Palmer, These attacks on your brother's business relationships are perfectly legitimate questions about company finances. I pulled out another document. Here's another interesting one. $50,000 transferred to an account owned by Richard Garrow. What was that for? Investment opportunities, Greg mumbled. Investment in what? Because according to this, Garrow's company received 3 major city contracts immediately after that transfer. The room went quiet. Chen was frantically taking notes, probably calculating how much trouble his clients were in. Where did you get these documents? Greg demanded. From our company's own financial records. You know, the ones I have access to as a 50% partner. I stood up, enjoying the moment. Here's what's going to happen. Greg, you're going to resign as a partner and sell me your shares at fair market value. Chen, you're going to find yourself a new client. And Owen Cross is going to discover that his cozy relationship with City Hall is about to become very public. You can't prove anything, Greg said, but his voice lacked conviction. I can prove enough. Federal investigators are very interested in public corruption cases these days. That was a bluff. I hadn't contacted any federal investigators yet, but the threat was enough to make Chen start packing his briefcase. This isn't over, Greg said, as they prepared to leave. You're right, it's not. After they left, I sat alone in the conference room, thinking about how quickly things could change. 3 days ago, I'd been a man whose biggest problem was a short circuit in the main panel. Now I was fighting for everything I'd built. My phone rang. Amelia. We need to talk, she said. Do we? The girls are asking questions. They want to know why I'm staying at my father's house. Tell them the truth. You're there because you're planning to destroy their father's life. Vince, please, can we try to work this out? For Lucy and Mia? For a moment, I almost believed she meant it. Then I remembered the group chat, the conspiracy, the systematic destruction of everything I'd worked for. It's too late for that, Amelia. What do you want? Money? The house? Just tell me what it'll take. I want you to disappear. You, Owen, your father, all of you. I want you to take your conspiracy and get the hell out of my life. That's not going to happen. Then we'll do this the hard way. You have no idea what the hard way looks like, Vince. She was wrong about that. I was just getting started. Thursday morning brought news that changed everything. Maria Santos called while I was having breakfast with Lucy and Mia, the first normal meal we'd shared since this whole mess started. You need to see this, she said. Can you meet me in an hour? I dropped the girls at school and drove to Maria's office, where she had photographs spread across her desk like a hand of poker. Your boy Owen's been busy, she said. Take a look. The photos showed Owen meeting with various people at restaurants, parking lots, and what appeared to be construction sites. In several shots, money was clearly changing hands. Kickbacks? I asked. Better than that. He's been taking payments to delay permits for Palmer Electric while fast-tracking approvals for cross-construction. But here's the beautiful part. He's been documenting everything. She handed me a flash drive. Digital copies of every transaction, every communication, every payment. The man's either incredibly stupid or incredibly paranoid. How did you get this? Let's just say Owen's not as careful with his computer passwords as he should be. I plugged the flash drive into her laptop. The files were damning. Spreadsheets tracking payments, email chains discussing which permits to delay, even photos of cash transactions. This is enough to destroy him, I said. It's enough to destroy all of them. Look at this. She opened another file, a detailed plan for taking over Palmer Electric. The timeline, the strategy, even the legal arguments they plan to use. It was all there, documented in Owen's own files. Why would he keep records of a conspiracy? Because he's planning to double-cross your wife and her father. Look at the dates. He's been preparing to cut them out of the deal once he gets control of your business. I scrolled through the documents, amazed by the scope of Owen's betrayal. He wasn't just planning to steal my company. He was planning to steal it from his co-conspirators, too. There's more, Maria said. Your brother, Greg? He's not just involved in the business takeover. He's been embezzling from Palmer Electric for over a year. She showed me bank records, forged invoices, phantom employees on the payroll. Greg had been systematically looting the company while I focused on the day-to-day operations. How much? Conservative estimate? About $200,000? I sat back in my chair, stunned. My own brother had been robbing me blind while planning to have me declared incompetent. What do you want to do with this information? Maria asked. I want to set a trap. Friday afternoon, I called Greg and suggested we meet at Murphy's Diner to discuss a reasonable solution to our partnership problems. He agreed, probably thinking I was ready to surrender. He was wrong. I arrived early and chose a booth near the back, away from other customers. Maria was already in position at the counter, pretending to read a newspaper while recording everything with a hidden camera. Greg showed up 10 minutes late, looking nervous. "Thanks for calling, Vince. I was hoping we could work something out." "I'm sure you were." I slid a manila folder across the table. "Take a look at these." Greg opened the folder and his face went white. The first document was a bank statement showing the phantom employees. The second was a copy of his personal account, showing deposits that corresponded exactly to the missing money. "Where did you get these?" he whispered. "Does it matter? The question is, what are we going to do about it?" "Vince, I can explain. You've been stealing from our company for over a year while planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. What's to explain?" Greg looked around the diner, probably hoping no one was listening. "It's not what it looks like. It looks like embezzlement and conspiracy and fraud. The money was just a loan. I was going to pay it back." "When? After you stole my half of the business?" Greg's shoulders sagged. "How much do you know?" "Everything. The kickback scheme with Owen, the plan to frame me as unstable, the fake consulting fees to your girlfriend's father, all of it." "Amelia's not my girlfriend." "I know. She's Owen's girlfriend. You're just the useful idiot who's helping them steal my company." That hit home. Greg's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. "You always thought you were better than me," he said. "Smarter, more successful, Dad's favorite. Dad hated both of us equally. Don't make this about childhood." "It's always been about childhood. You got the brains, the business sense, the respect. What did I get? You got an equal partnership in a successful company, and you pissed it away because you were jealous." Greg leaned across the table. "You want to know the truth? This whole thing was my idea. Owen and Amelia were just having an affair. I'm the one who suggested we could use it to take over Palmer Electric." I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was celebrating. He'd just confessed to conspiracy on camera. "Why?" I asked. "Because I deserve half of everything we built, and I was tired of being the junior partner in my own life. So you decided to destroy me instead of just asking for a bigger role in the company." "Would you have given it to me? Honestly, probably not." Greg had never shown much interest in the business side of things, but that didn't justify theft and conspiracy. "We'll never know now," I said. Greg studied my face. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to give you a choice. You can resign from Palmer Electric, pay back the money you stole, and disappear. Or I can call the FBI and let them sort it out." "You don't have enough evidence for federal charges," I smiled. "Want to bet?" I pulled out my phone and showed him photos of Owen's files, the kickback records, the conspiracy documents, everything Maria had uncovered. "Owen's been keeping very detailed records," I said, "including records of payments to you." Greg stared at the phone screen, his face getting paler by the second. "He's going to throw you under the bus," I continued. "You know that, right? When this all comes out, Owen's going to claim he was just following your instructions. You'll be the mastermind, and he'll be the poor city inspector who got corrupted by a greedy businessman." "That's not—" "He wouldn't. He's already preparing to double-cross Amelia and her father. What makes you think you're special?" Greg was quiet for a long time, staring at the documents spread across the table. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Your resignation, effective immediately, full repayment of stolen funds within 30 days, and a signed confession detailing your role in the conspiracy. And if I do that, I don't call the FBI. You get to start over somewhere else with a clean slate." "What about Owen and Amelia? They're not your problem anymore." Greg nodded slowly. "I'll need a few days to get the money together. You have until Monday. After that, the offer expires." After Greg left, Maria joined me in the booth. "Think he'll take the deal?" she asked. "He doesn't have a choice. The evidence against him is overwhelming." "What about the other two?" I thought about Owen's arrogance, Amelia's sense of entitlement, the way they'd systematically tried to destroy my life. They're not getting a deal. What's the plan? Public humiliation, complete destruction of their reputations, and maybe a little creative revenge. Maria grinned. "Now you're talking my language." Saturday morning, I put the final phase of my plan into motion. It was time to show Owen Cross and my soon-to-be ex-wife exactly what happened when you tried to steal from Vincent Palmer. The first step was simple. I called a press conference. Saturday morning, I stood in the parking lot of Palmer Electric, surrounded by reporters, city officials, and about half the electrical contractors in Detroit. Word had spread quickly that I was going to make some kind of major announcement about city corruption, and everyone wanted to be there for the show. Maria Santos stood nearby, holding a briefcase full of evidence. My father was there too, looking proud for the first time in years. Even Nate had shown up, grinning like he was about to watch his favorite team win the Super Bowl. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice carrying across the parking lot. 3 days ago, I discovered that my wife, my business partner, and a city inspector named Owen Cross were conspiring to steal my company through a combination of fraud, embezzlement, and public corruption. A murmur went through the crowd. Several reporters started taking notes frantically. "Today, I'm going to show you exactly how they plan to do it." I nodded to Maria, who began distributing copies of Owen's files to the reporters. Bank records, email chains, photographs of cash transactions, everything we'd uncovered in the past week. Owen Cross has been taking kickbacks to delay permits for Palmer Electric, while fast-tracking approvals for companies owned by Richard Garrow, my wife's father. The total value of these illegal transactions exceeds $500,000. A reporter from the Detroit Free Press raised her hand. "Do you have proof of these allegations?" "I have Owen Cross's own records, documented in his personal files and corroborated by bank transactions." I held up a flash drive. "Every payment, every delayed permit, every illegal approval is documented here." Another reporter called out, "What about your wife's involvement?" "Amelia Palmer has been working with Cross and Garrow to have me declared mentally incompetent so they could seize control of Palmer Electric. They plan to use fabricated evidence of erratic behavior to justify removing me from the company I built." That's when things got interesting. A black Audi pulled into the parking lot, followed by a Mercedes sedan. Owen Cross got out of the Audi, looking like a man walking to his execution. Richard Garrow emerged from the Mercedes, his face purple with rage. "This is all lies," Garrow shouted, pushing through the crowd. "This man is having a mental breakdown." "Mr. Garrow," I said calmly, "would you like to explain why your company received 3 major city contracts immediately after you paid $50,000 to Owen Cross?" Garrow's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Owen grabbed his arm, probably trying to keep him from saying something incriminating. "We don't have to listen to this," Owen said. "Come on, Richard." "Actually, you do." My father stepped forward, showing his retired police badge. "Because I've already forwarded copies of all this evidence to the FBI's Public Corruption Unit." The color drained from Owen's face. "You can't prove anything. I can prove everything." I pulled out my phone and opened the voice memo app. "Including this conversation I recorded yesterday with my brother Greg, where he confessed to embezzling $200,000 and masterminding the entire conspiracy." I played a snippet of Greg's confession, his voice clearly admitting to the theft and conspiracy. The crowd went silent. "Greg Palmer has agreed to cooperate fully with federal investigators in exchange for leniency," I continued. "He's provided detailed information about the kickback scheme, the embezzlement, and the plan to steal Palmer Electric." Owen looked like he might throw up. Garrow was backing toward his car, probably calculating how quickly he could get to an airport. "There's more," I said, enjoying the moment. "Owen Cross has been keeping detailed records of his criminal activities, including photographs of cash transactions and spreadsheets tracking illegal payments. He's also been planning to double-cross his co-conspirators once he gained control of my company." I nodded to Maria, who distributed another set of documents. Owen's plans to cut out Amelia and her father once the takeover was complete. "You son of a bitch!" Garrow snarled at Owen. "You were going to screw us over?" "Richard, not here! Not here! Not here!" Garrow's voice rose to a shout. "You lying piece of garbage! We had a deal!" And that's when Richard Garrow, in full view of a dozen reporters and news cameras, punched Owen Cross in the face. Owen went down hard, his expensive suit getting dirty in the parking lot gravel. Garrow stood over him, screaming about betrayal and broken promises while cameras captured every moment. "Gentlemen," I said into the chaos, "I think that concludes today's press conference." The reporters scattered, racing to file their stories. The city officials huddled together, probably trying to figure out how to contain the damage. And Owen Cross lay in the gravel, his nose bleeding and his career in ruins. But I wasn't done yet. Sunday morning, while Owen and Garrow were dealing with FBI agents and arrest warrants, I paid a visit to Amelia. She was staying at her father's house, probably hoping the whole thing would blow over. She answered the door in a bathrobe, looking like she hadn't slept in days. "Hello, Amelia." "Vince, I saw the news." "I figured you might." She stepped aside to let me in. The house was quiet. Garrow was probably meeting with lawyers, trying to figure out how to avoid federal prison. "What do you want?" she asked. "I want you to sign these." I handed her a manila folder. "Divorce papers. I get full custody of the girls. You get nothing." "Nothing? You conspired to steal my business and destroy my life. You're lucky I'm not having you arrested too." Amelia's face hardened. "I'll fight this. I'll get a lawyer. With what money? Your father's assets are frozen pending federal investigation. Owen's broke and facing 20 years in prison, and Greg's cooperating with the FBI to save his own skin." She sank into a chair, finally understanding the scope of her situation. "The girls," she said quietly. "I want to see the girls. That's up to them, but I wouldn't count on a warm reception. They're my daughters too. You should have thought about that before you tried to destroy their father." Amelia stared at the divorce papers for a long time. Finally, she picked up a pen. "I hate you," she said as she signed. "I know, but you'll get over it." Monday morning, I walked into Palmer Electric as the sole owner of the company. Greg had resigned over the weekend and was busy liquidating assets to pay back the money he'd stolen. Owen Cross was in federal custody. Richard Garrow was facing charges for conspiracy, bribery, and assault, and I was free. "Morning, Mr. Palmer," Janet called out as I walked past her desk. "Congratulations on cleaning house." "Thank you, Janet. How are we looking for new business?" "The phone's been ringing all morning. Seems like every contractor in the city wants to work with the guy who took down the corruption ring." I smiled. "Nothing like a little public justice to improve your business reputation." Nate appeared in my doorway, grinning from ear to ear. "So, boss, what's next?" "Next, we rebuild. Bigger, better, and completely honest." "Sounds good to me." He paused. "What about the girls?" "They're moving back in tonight. Lucy's already planning to redecorate Amelia's old office. Smart kid. She gets it from her father." That evening, I sat in my kitchen with Lucy and Mia, eating pizza and watching the news coverage of Owen's arrest. The reporter was calling it the biggest public corruption scandal in Detroit in 20 years. "Dad," Mia said, "are you really going to be okay?" "We're all going to be okay, sweetheart. Better than okay." "What about Mom?" I thought about Amelia, probably sitting in her father's empty house, contemplating a future without money, without power, without the family she'd tried to destroy. "Your mother made some bad choices. Now she has to live with the consequences." Lucy looked up from her homework. "Good. She deserved it." "Lucy, she did, Dad. She was mean to you. She lied to us, and she tried to steal your company. I'm glad she's gone." Mia nodded in agreement. "Me too. Can we get a dog now?" I laughed, the first genuine laugh I'd had in weeks. "We'll see about the dog." Later that night, after the girls were in bed, I stood in my backyard looking up at the stars. The house felt like home again, the way it had before Amelia's betrayal poisoned everything. My phone buzzed with a text from Maria Santos. "Owen just pleaded guilty to all charges. Garrow's lawyer is trying to negotiate a plea deal. Your brother's testimony sealed the case." I typed back, "What about the civil suits?" "Palmer Electric will probably recover about $3 million in damages, plus legal fees, plus punitive damages. You're going to be very wealthy." Wealthy and free. Not a bad combination. I thought about Owen Cross, sitting in a federal holding cell, contemplating 20 years in prison. I thought about Richard Garrow, watching his business empire crumble while he waited for trial. I thought about Greg, starting over at 42 with nothing but the clothes on his back. And I thought about Amelia, alone in her father's house, finally understanding what it felt like to lose everything. They'd tried to destroy me, and instead they'd destroyed themselves. There was a certain poetic justice in that. The blue wire had completed its circuit, and the current had flowed exactly where it was supposed to go. Justice had been served, my family was safe, and Palmer Electric was stronger than ever. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting your enemies destroy themselves.